Okay. Hello, everyone. I am running a little bit behind. My apologies. I'm just gonna wait. Hey, Esi. How's it going? I'm just gonna give people like 5 minutes. No, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes to come through, and then we will just get it popping. Let me get my theme music going. Okay. Theme song on. Okay. As people come through, Esi, when you come on, I'm gonna have Esi introduce herself. She's my guest for today, and I'm really excited about having her on because she's super special to me in many ways, and she does a lot of great work. And this week is still 2020 Graduates Week, but I wanted to get her on here just because I think the work she does. No, I see it. I see your request. I think the work she does is really important because she works with students at a variety of levels, and she has people in her program, which she'll explain when she gets on, who are 2020 graduates, who are, going through a lot of these problems we discussed earlier in the week with these other guests. And I think she'll be able to really speak from firsthand experience on what she's seeing these students go through, how they're managing, how they're dealing with the stress, and in terms of internships and graduating full-time jobs and that whole bit. So I'm gonna get her on here and we will get into some things. Okay, I think you're coming on.
Hello.
Hello, how's it going? How are you?
How are you? How was your day?
Oh God, it was really busy. Like right now, I'm sweating. I have such a bad habit of sweating when I'm nervous, so please excuse that.
You're fine. I can't see it yet.
Okay, good. But like I said, I'm so excited to have you here. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because you do a lot. You do a lot. You just do a lot, and I think I think you saw my story yesterday, but I had this interview on a podcast, and we were just talking about like college and graduating. And I talked about development in the interview, and I was talking about how important the organization was. And like the girl was from New Jersey, and she was like, "Oh, development! Like it sounds like a great organization, but I've never even heard of it."
Right.
So I want you to let people know who you are, like your background, where you went to school, your work experience, and all of that. But also, we're definitely going to get into development. So the floor is yours.
All right. Stop me if I go too far or if I miss something. So my name is Esi Gillo, and I am a co-founder of DIFFvelopment, as Ajakuma already stated. Where to begin? Okay, so I haven't talked about like where I go to school in a long time. Or where I went to school. So I studied African American studies or Afro American studies, psychology, and African studies at Smith College from undergrad. And for grad school, I went to the University of Oxford, where I got a master's in African studies. From there, I went on to, most of my jobs were in the nonprofit world, but to even enter in that space, I definitely experienced a lot of underemployment, unemployment, which is kind of how development was born. And I'm sure you'll ask me questions that relate to that, so I won't go too far into that. But DIFFvelopment is a tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit organization with the mission of re-empowering people of African descent one student at a time. And we fulfill our mission by addressing the lack of Black generational wealth through culturally specific entrepreneurial and financial education that essentially empowers Black college students to overcome socioeconomic barriers and build generational wealth, which is really important in our community. And we do that in a variety of ways. I don't know if you want me to get into that or if I should just stop right there.
I think let me give you the prompts because I really want you to get into that part. So
Exactly.
I'll give you a few questions and then we're gonna get into the work development does.
Sure.
So first, I kind of want to go first in your background regarding school because, like you said, you have your bachelor's degree and your master's degree. So
Right.
obviously, you're a highly educated woman, and you majored in Afro-American studies and psychology. So kind of take us through the journey of how you discovered your major, why you chose your major, and what your plan was like once you were going to graduate school.
Sure. So in undergrad, well, growing up, I always knew I wanted to do psychology. I think I was saying that I wanted to be a psychologist for a very long time. Um, that started from just like people trusting me with information, people trusting me with helping them through their problems. So that was definitely always there. Growing up in a Pan-Africanist household, um, going on to study anything Black kind of it was already in me. It wasn't something I had thought about, but once I got to Smith and I really liked the professors within the Afro-American Studies department, I was like, all right, I'm double majoring. If I could have triple majored, I would have, but I couldn't do that. So I got a certification in African Studies through the 5 college consortium. And then when I started thinking about doing my master's, I didn't want to continue with psychology because I feel like it's more of a calling and something that I do innately. And I didn't want to dig deeper into the technical aspect of it. I wasn't interested in getting a PhD in psychology. And I wanted to know more about the African situation from whatever perspective I could delve into. So I started looking at different programs throughout the US and then the UK and elsewhere. I actually really wanted to go to Aseshi is it Aseshi in Ghana, but my dad was like no, so I was like okay, whatever. So I gave that up because it's an entrepreneurial school in Ghana, but I gave that up, and then I knew I did not want to take I don't even know what they're called, but the tests you have to take for grad school in the US. I was like, I'm just not doing that. I've never been a good test taker, and I don't think I don't think it really tells you anything about a person's intellect. So when I looked at the UK and I saw that that wasn't an issue, like that wasn't, you don't have to take any standardized tests. I was like, oh yeah, this is for me. So I applied to Cambridge, Oxford, and the School of Oriental and African Studies. I got into Oxford and the University, the School of Oriental and African Studies. And obviously I went to Oxford. They had an African Studies program. It was a small cohort. It was an intense master's program, probably more intense than I had anticipated because, US education and UK education is quite different. But whatever the case may be, it was a great experience. Just to also learn about African studies. I think it was heavily into like politics. It was heavily into the colonial, neo-colonial, present time period. And it was interesting to learn that from descendants of colonizers, right? People always ask me like, why would you go to the UK to learn about Africans? I was like, why wouldn't I? They've been studying us and our future for centuries. So why wouldn't I want to learn from them? And I learned a lot there. So yeah, that was kind of my journey. And when I was done, I thought I was going to go into the research space. I didn't have like a set thing that I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to maybe go into the intellectual realm, maybe a think tank. And I'll stop there because I know you have questions and I can just keep going.
No, that's perfect. Cause like you're about to lead into like your first few jobs. Cause I want to lead into like how development came about. And I know like from working with you, I should have prefaced that I volunteer for Esi and I volunteer for development on my off time. And I'll kind of get into that, how we met and how that volunteer work kind of came about. But I feel like a lot of your first years and like your first few years of post-grad professionalism have led to like development and like the
Definitely.
mission of development. So yeah, I would love for you to keep going.
Definitely. So, yeah, I thought, oh, I went to Oxford, I went to Smith. Like, I'm just gonna take my pick at a job. And it wasn't out of arrogance. It was just like I worked hard. I went to great schools. Like, this shouldn't be an issue. I never thought about it being an issue. Nobody told me it would be an issue. So it just wasn't an issue. I just started applying, and I would get interviews. They're not familiar with Ajuman, but it's like the man, maybe they thought I was Jewish or something. Like, so I would get these interviews, and then I would walk in, and you could immediately see like
disappointment.
I feel like that was pre-LinkedIn. So people just went based on what they thought, and yeah, I would get interviews. I mean, I interviewed with the Council on Foreign Relations, and the guy I was talking to never studied Africa. He's in charge of the Africa department. He's still there. No shots fired at him, but like did not study Africa. Like they're supposed to be the African department. They're only looking at Nigeria, Kenya, and I'm like, well, there are a lot of other countries. Like I can help you guys with that. And everyone who was in the African department had no African background. They were all white. So I was met with that a lot, and that was a reality I just couldn't fathom, because I assumed that I studied Black people and I'm going to work with Black people. I didn't, maybe I was naive. I guess when you're young, you just don't understand the layer of disenfranchisement. You just assume like, okay, yeah, I get it, but like I study Black people, I'm going to work with Black people. No, it wasn't like that. So after like months and months of not getting anything and being really frustrated, I finally got like, I started working at like a health juice bar. Arinze is his brother's first restaurant. I started working there again. It was my first job when I was like 14. And I was like, hey, still don't have a job. Can I come back? I'm 21 now. And they were like, yeah, of course. The love was so deep. Like, it was like, even if they didn't need any workers, they would always hire me. So I did that for some time. And then finally I got a job at a nonprofit in Newark. And it was a startup. And, the focus was definitely on, it was called the Center for Collaborative Change. It was definitely focused on helping the Newark community, which essentially is a Black community, and just dealing with all the various endemic issues that we have. And I was like, okay, this could be a good fit. It's not exactly what I want to do, but it could be a good fit. And I didn't love it, for a lot of different reasons. It wasn't Black led, but I did appreciate the people that I met there, and the executive director liked me a lot, and she allowed me. I played a lot of roles. I was her special assistant. I transitioned into this and that, and I was doing all types of stuff I had no business doing. And now I can really appreciate her allowing me to do all of that. At the time, it was really weird. She's like, yeah, you're going to help me manage a board. I'm like, what is a board? I didn't even know what a board was. She's like, just look it up. Like, just figure it out. I just need you to help me manage them. So all of a sudden, I'm 21 and I'm like managing a board. I'm putting together board meetings. I'm figuring out what their roles and responsibilities are. So that was kind of like the beginning of my nonprofit life. I worked there for about a year. I wasn't pleased with how things were going. And being in a space that was Black led was really important to me, especially if I'm dealing with Black issues. It just didn't, I just couldn't get with it. And so I left kind of abruptly, which I regret. But, when you're young, you kind of do it. You don't always know.
You want and you think later. Hell, I did it.
So I left, and then what happened after that? Again, back to this sort of unemployment type of situation. And then I was a lot of my friends were experiencing the same thing. They had great degrees, but they couldn't find anything. They're like, you need to temp. And I was like, I'm not temping. I'm not doing that. And a lot of the temp roles were in finance, and I had absolutely no interest in that. It was something I had never thought about to any capacity, like not at all. And I was just like, I'm not temping. I didn't go to grad school to temp. And so after some more months went by, I was like, okay, what's the number again? Because I need a job.
And
And
just for, sorry to interrupt, but just for anyone new coming, who is coming in, Esi's kind of going into her first years of professional background, and she's kind of like, she's setting up for how her nonprofit organization, which she co-founds with her husband, how that kind of came about. So like everything you're saying right now, especially now, because like I know the organization, everything you're saying right now is like infiltrated in the mission of the organization. Like your experience has directly led to the creation of the organization. So just wanted to give that preface.
Yeah, no, perfect. Literally. So, yeah, I said, you know what? Okay, fine. What's the number? Let me give it a shot. So I started temping in New York, and I worked at the front desk. I did it all. And it was an interesting time. It was my first real experience within the corporate space. Nothing about it appealed to me, but I needed a job. So I ended up at SIFMA Foundation, which is a lobbying firm. And SIFMA is a lobbying firm, but SIFMA Foundation is their philanthropic arm, and they have what they call the stock market game program, which teaches like K through 12 students essentially how to invest in stocks. Exactly what it sounds like, the stock market game. And so I ended up there, and the executive director, who's now president, really liked me. And she was like, so I'm at the interview, and she's like, so why do you want this job? And I was like, because I'm tired of looking for jobs. I just need a job. That's exactly what I
Yep.
And I remember getting on the train home, and I was like, or whatever. I was like, Peter is my husband. And I was like, well, he was my boyfriend at the time. I was like, I'm not getting that job. I just like, I don't know why I said that. Like, I can be very blunt sometimes, as you know very well. And yeah, I thought I wasn't going to get the job, but precisely my bluntness is the exact same thing which made her hire me. So, or she took me on as a temp, and then I was there for about 3-4 months, and I saw, white girls come in and get after me and get hired like in a month. And I had been there like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. What's going on? So I reached out to a temp agency, and I was like, I think I've been here long enough. I'm seeing other people who came after me get jobs. Like, what's up? And she was like, oh, okay, let me reach out to her. And, within a couple of days, we were talking about me becoming full time. And this is a story I always share with my students. And they offered me like $50,000. I'm like, Oxford grad, I don't know, like that's kind of small for me to come all the way from New Jersey, like. And so she was like, well, what were you expecting? And I was like, at least 60. Like that was like my like bottom. And she's like, well, you would be making twice what you're making now. I was like, I'm a temp. Like there's no comparability. Like this is not comparable. Like, and even at that time, I felt offended, by that. Pay me what you know what I mean? Like I felt offended by the implication of what she was saying. And I was very raw. I mean, I was ready to walk away from that job. I didn't care. Like, I don't know, I think it was just the way I was raised.
I love it because I feel like you were so young, but you still like. I feel like it takes people so long to get to that point where like they know what they want and they know that they're not going to deal with flat out. So I totally respect that you knew that pretty young. Like, okay, I know I'm not making enough, and you're not going to BS your way to try to tell me to be grateful for what you're giving me because like you're not giving me enough.
I was like, absolutely not. And so within a week, I had like I think 62 or something, and I knew that was still small because I knew what other people were making with the degree that I had. And so I was like, all right, whatever, I'll take it. And so I worked there for 4 years. I went from manager. Well, I started off as an executive assistant. Yeah, exactly. They do want us to be grateful for this graph. So we'll talk
more. That's my sister, y'all. That's my sister. Let them know. Let them know, Deidre. Go ahead.
Is the one who's at Buffalo?
No, she graduated from Binghamton, but she's been working for a long time. And she just got a new job, and she reminds me of you right now. Like she was kind of like, this is what I want, this is how much I want, and I'm not budging for anything.
You have to like that because eventually someone will you'll get to the right place. You can't be afraid of, if you waited 6 months, you can wait enough, you know, like,
Yeah.
so I worked there. I started off as an executive assistant. So I was on this executive assistant trajectory, which was also offensive with my degree. You know, that's the other aspect. I was still underemployed. Like someone may say, oh, like, well, I was being paid 40. And it's like, well, sorry for you, but that's still, you know, 60 is not great. Sorry.
Yes.
And then being an executive assistant with my degree and my, it was tough for me. You know, but again, I learned a lot because I mean, all the skills that I'm using now, I I know it came from there. You know, there were days when she would hand me like a 30-minute video or audio tape and be like, I need you to transcribe this in 15 minutes. And I'd be like, what? And she'd be like, no one talk to Esi right now. Like, I was the only Black person in that was part of SIFMA Foundation. I was the youngest. And so, yeah, I started off as an executive assistant, and eventually, I don't know if I complained or it just wasn't fitting of my skill set. And so I eventually ended up becoming a program coordinator. I managed, by the time I left, I was managing 5 states. I was managing 5 states with 20,000 students. You know, everything from marketing to, you know, setting up events and uh, everything. So that was my journey there. But halfway through, I started getting really bored because I had mastered the job and they wanted me to do more than what I needed to do. And I knew that I didn't need to do more than I needed to do. My work was excellent, so they couldn't fire me. And I wasn't interested in climbing the corporate ladder. So I just did my job. And when it was like, oh, do you want to go to Texas on my behalf? No, I'm good. Oh, do you want to take on this extra project? No, I'm good. You know, if that's a problem, you can fire me. I don't care. But all I know is that my numbers look right and I'm doing what I need to do. So it was a weird dynamic. They couldn't get rid of me because my work was really good.
Yep.
But it was clear that I didn't care about excelling there, like climbing. And so I knew that that would eventually become a point of contention. So that's when I was like, you know what? I really need to figure out my out. And there were a series of things Peter and I tried, and there is not enough time for me to get into all of that. We delved into a lot of different things, but eventually we settled on development. And um, it was the only thing out of all the things that we came up with that encompassed all of our interests, that was purpose driven. You know, we came up with some like for-profit ideas, and then we realized that we weren't really for-profit people. And then it was like, okay, what can we do? And then we worked at a restaurant while I was at this corporate job. I was so bored that, long story short, we walked into a restaurant one day and I was like, oh, y'all need help. It was a Black owned restaurant. And I was like, you know, I could help. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, right? Because I was commuting to New York every single day. And I was like, yeah. And Peter was underemployed at the time. He had been laid off now for the like second time. I don't know. And he was working for UPS. He was working for Olive Garden. He was, you know, like we were really thugging it out. And
Yeah.
I really was speaking on his behalf, but I really liked the place and I just wanted to be in a Black environment. So I was like, I don't care. Like, I'll work here on the weekends. I'll work after work. I just want to be around my people.
Yeah.
And so the lady liked me. She interviewed me. And in a week, I had this restaurant job on top of my other job. And long story short, I got Peter on there too. And we started essentially managing the spot. And she wanted it to become a franchise. And we were like, oh, we can help you do that because we were doing everything.
Yeah.
And so I started drawing up plans, much like you do, like, you know how it is. And so I started drawing up plans and she wanted to go to California. I was like, well, we can manage the New Jersey office and you can go to California. It was like this whole thing. And long story short, we came to realize like every Black college student needs this experience where they analyze a business and they think about how the business can grow. I don't know how we came to that conclusion. Like, I just don't know how the two correlated, but it just happened. And so it started with the Consultantpreneurship. That was the first real idea, but we came up with the name DIFFvelopment, and it was June 18th, 2015. And we got the EIN right away. You know, we got the domain right away. We were like, this is the name. And then,
And just before we continue on, can you kind of explain the name development? Because it's not like spelled development.
Yes.
Obviously, people can tell, but like just give them the meaning behind that.
Definitely. So, very straightforward, you know, different development, right? So, a lot of people say they're helping us, right? There's developmental this and developmental that. And, you know, there's a lot of programs on developmental studies. I was in one of them in Uganda, and they're always developing us, but none of it works.
Always developing us.
So, so we were like, you know what? Different development, like our way. So that's kind of how it came about, DIFFvelopment. So that's how the name was born. And so I was at my job and I was determined. I started planning. I started planning my out, and I started creating the business. You know, it was an obsession. I was working on it all the time, on my commute, while I was walking. Like, I had different tasks for different aspects of my commute. So if I was sitting, I would be like doing like working on the curriculum, which I printed out. Like, if I was standing, sometimes I'd be doing the same thing. Or I'd be doing something on my cell phone or reading an article, you know. And then I definitely, I don't want to incriminate myself, but I definitely leveraged my job to do what I needed to do to build the business. Yeah. And so, yeah, I had a plan. I said, we got to incorporate this. We got to get the 501c3. We have to create our board of directors. We sent invitations out. We interviewed everybody. We had our first couple of board meetings. We had our launch event, and then I was out. I quit May 2017. And right before we did our first Consultantpreneurship, I wanted to be fully dedicated. I was trying to see if they would let me work from home, and I would have juggled both, but they wouldn't budge. And I was like, I'm out, you know? So that's how it started.
And now we're about to get into like the actual like development portion, like your programming and what you guys like specifically do with these students. But you also have this program name called the Consultantpreneurship, which is always difficult for me to say, but also explain the idea behind the name itself.
So it was like, one aspect of it is heavily into the consulting, like the practicum. And then consulting is entrepreneurial, period. However, it can be an entrepreneurial thing that you can be a consultant for a firm, for Accenture or whatever. So we combine consulting with entrepreneurship, and then also an internship, so consultantpreneurship. And we were like, how can we create a program that will appeal to Black college students who are trying to build their resume, but want something Black, right? But it doesn't, you know. And so that was kind of how it was born. It was like, consulting is very important. It's a very important skill set for anyone to have, because we are all essentially consultants. Even when you're an employee, you're a consultant. When you're a freelancer, you're a consultant. You know, everyone is a consultant, whether they know it or not. So just flat out saying it and teaching young people how to be that is the best skill set that you could give them. And then teaching them about entrepreneurship, obviously, you know, we do that from a culturally specific perspective. But, you know, it was just a term that wasn't threatening to anyone, and it said what it is, but it's a lot more than that. But yeah, so that was the term that we came up with.
And what I really liked about the name, and also just that whole idea of like the consultantpreneurship program, is that, like you said, a lot of the things we do are consulting. I remember even asking you at one point, I'm like, is what I'm doing like even though it's volunteer work, I was like, is what I'm doing consulting? Like, I wasn't even sure, because like I was just like, oh, like things I've kind of already been doing like for some time is considered consulting.
Yeah.
I could have been made this a whole like business on the side, you know, while I was in school. And I think that's the super cool thing about your organization and development as a whole, is that like for college students, and we're going to go into 2020 grads in a minute, but like college students who are either like work, going to school for full time, or if they have an internship and they're looking to begin establishing their own business, or try to set something up for themselves before they graduate. Something as small as like consulting is something they could do. They're probably already doing it,
Yeah.
on their campus for people. So I just love that you're tapping into things that we kind of already do on a daily, but kind of giving people the framework for them to like amplify it and make it more official, and be
Mm-hmm.
more serious about it. So it's super cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's it, because even in our program, it takes some time for the students to understand that consulting is entrepreneurial. So now I've updated the curriculum. I know you're tired of hearing me talk about anyone who's close to me knows I've been talking about this curriculum for months, but I've been updating it because we're copywriting it, and I really made a point to hone in on defining consulting so they get it, and then even making them do, they've always had to do this activity, but I think getting them to, okay, you have your business concept, that's cool, but what do you, based on what you're good at and all that stuff, how could you turn that into consulting work? So we do an activity on that, and I think it drives things home because, yeah, it's hard for people to wrap their head around that. I don't know why. They're like, yeah, I think like I have to get a degree, and no, you don't.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
so yeah, it just understanding that entrepreneurship is all around you. It's just whether you choose to claim it or not. You can be an entrepreneur for someone else, and they're gonna get the bulk of the fruits of your labor, or you
Yeah.
can take the fruits of your.
Mm. Yes, I love that. I love that so much. So now I want us to go to kind of talk specifically about 2020 grads, because we are in 2020 grad week, and I know you currently work with a few 2020 grads in your current program, and kind of like share what you've been seeing. And you've also been doing, yes, my sister said, I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it that way either. You can be an entrepreneur for someone else and make that money, or you can be an entrepreneur for yourself. Love that
Yep.
idea. But I was saying, what are you seeing in terms of like what 2020 grads are concerned about, what they're worried about, like what are their thought processes during this moment regarding graduating, finding a job, and all of that, especially considering obviously the multiple issues we're going through.
Mm,
I think you being able to see, you've seen like you're in your third or fourth cohort class.
fourth.
Fourth. So
Yeah.
you've seen different years come through. So I'm thinking this might be a little different. So tell me like what you've been seeing, and then you can kind of tell us about like how the consultantpreneurship program has been supporting them through that.
Definitely. And the interesting thing is, as you know, we also recently started our Development College Summit series, which is an
I'm
IG.
getting there. Yep.
And so now we're talking to like recent grads or people who are about to graduate. We're talking to them more frequently, and they're outside of our program, which is great because I never thought that just having a conversation with someone one off could be impactful. But it is. So I now have the perspective of our alums. Um, and then even with our Black Generational Wealth Workshop, we connect with so many students and they stay in touch. So we now have like all these different versions of people that we've touched in some type of way. And I think the biggest thing is it's the same stuff, like they're worried about being discriminated against, not getting a job. They're worried about how do I negotiate. They're worried about all the debt that they're in. In some cases, they're worried about a familial financial dependence. In some cases, they're worried about their sketchy spending habits. And they're
Yeah,
going to
I've
stop.
listened in on a few of those, and woo, yes.
So they're worried about like the normal stuff, but they're also worried about those things that are really, really pertain to us. So just I think sometimes we also forget that a lot of college students are innocent. Because race is such a thing, we assume that everyone's thinking about it all the time,
Yeah.
but college students are very naive. So they're just like any other college student. They're like, yeah, I like spending. Yeah, when I get my first paycheck, da 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 da. So part of our job, even when they go through our program, it's hard to get them out of that mindset. So it's really something that we are really focused on is drilling into them. Like, that's cool, but you're going to graduate and it's going to get real. So what are you trying to do? Like, what are you actually trying to do, and how can we get you there? If you have $100,000 in loans, you need to stay at home. Talk about you want to get your own apartment. What are you talking about? And your parents are saying that you can stay home. So just like they're aware of like the obvious stuff, but they haven't experienced it yet. So it's not real. And so part of our job is to make it real for them by giving them scenarios and walking them through things, and a lot of times they think they know more than they know. Like, oh yeah, like I've really educated myself on finances and blah blah blah. But last year I was kind of, like, okay, what we spending on? Like, what happened? And so I think the biggest problem is that I see is the spending. They don't they don't understand like the spending. They don't understand why it's important to get in control of that, and how it's not just gonna change. It's a mindset thing. So if you're doing that with your little work study money, what are you gonna do with a $3,000 check? So but I think right now, with the current time period, with the Black Lives Matter situation, with the COVID situation, again, like I said, college students these are young, innocent people who can't really fully wrap their minds around what it all means naturally, right? It's like they're angry, they're frustrated, they're confused. They can learn their history, but they don't, when they actually see it playing out real time and they see that nothing has changed, it's hard for them to digest that, and they're not sure how that applies to them. So I really like to focus on empowering them to not be surprised by what's been happening for centuries. Don't be surprised by it, but figure out what you can do. Figure out how you can leverage your passions to do something about it. If it makes you upset, if it makes you uncomfortable, how can you do something about it? And are you going to be able to do that through your corporate job? Or do you need to be thinking about something else? And how can you combine the corporate job with your passion so that you can be a change maker? Because we need change makers, right? We don't need any more workers. We have enough of them. So it's a weird, it's even with our current cohort, like we talk so much about the history of our people, like that what's happening right now, it's like it gets to a point where they're like, okay, like I get it. Like, I mean, it's been going on for a long time. So it sucks to see it right in front of you and to know like, damn, someone got hung in the next town over. Like, what is I could get hung, like it's hard to process that even for you and me. But I'm just like, let's focus on what we can do to change this. What can you do to foster change in the short time you have here on this earth? What can you do to leave a legacy, not only for your children, but for our community? So that's really like our big focus.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a lot.
It is.
And like, and what you said was so right about like coming out of college. Like, yes, like when you come out of college, like you're an adult, you're an 18, like you're 21, 22, like, but in the grand scheme of things, like you said, like we are still pretty naive to how the world works. And like until that 6-month grace period on your student loan is up and like it's in repayment period, you're not going to understand like, oh, maybe I really didn't need to take out that student loan when I didn't need to, or like maybe I should have saved up like the extra money I had instead of spending it. It's like these little things that we really don't realize. And just going back to like your current cohort class and like the specifically the ones who are like in the graduating time period, or I guess all of them, how have you been like managing the program during this time period? I know usually you have all the students in person and it's very like a very in-person direct program, and you like to have all the students together in like a very class, like I don't want to say lecture style, but like in a family style kind of way. And now you guys are kind of working digitally. How has that been?
Honestly, I can't pay them to believe me, but it's better. It's better. It's a better experience. I feel like they're I feel like they're not taking each other for granted. They're not taking the program for granted. They they absorb every minute. They're there every minute. Like they're intensely committed to the program in a way that I've never seen before because I always thought like, oh, we have to be together. No, they have to be here. And if someone's late, we have to wait for them. And I thought like we just had to be together. But over the years, I realized that, some people, people come in with different mindsets. Like, oh, I already have my friends. I'm just here for me.
Yeah.
And which I really don't like because we're not about that. One of the things that we're about is building collectivity. You can't have an individualistic mindset and be in our program. So I feel like the virtual nature is actually forcing them to go the extra mile, be on time, be present, be more involved with each other. I'm so abundantly impressed with them. Words cannot explain how impressed I am with them. And I like, and also just seeing someone's face all the time is a different level of interaction. I mean, you can have a classroom and someone sleeps all the time, or they're texting all the time, or they're late all the time. And so they're there, but they're not there. It's really hard to not be present behind a computer screen.
Yes.
Like it's really hard. I don't know what it is, but there's something about it that's just like I'm here because I choose to be here. Like I'm really, really here. Like I have no excuses. I didn't have to get on a train. So honestly, they don't believe it. They're always like, "Oh, we're missing something." I'm like, "No, you're not. We had a game night the other day. You performed. Yo, they played and played and played and played, and then the next day, they're doing such a great job with their work. This is the first time all assignments are on time, all assignments are complete, all assignments are excellent, and that's because they don't have anything else to do. And I appreciate that, because the summer, I always wanted it to be like an all year round internship where people could apply for a fall, spring, summer. And Peter was like, "We'll kill ourselves," and I'm glad he said that because it would have been too much. But summer, you're competing with the outdoors. You're competing with, I stayed up all night with my friends. I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. They're just showing up, but they're everywhere. So this has been interesting. It's a different level of commitment behind a computer. The pandemic has helped, and they're just focused. Like the other day, we told them, it was yesterday. You guys have done such a great job with your work. Just take the day off. We don't need to meet today. There's nothing to talk about because we usually have our consultation meetings on Wednesdays. They stayed on for like 3-4 hours after that. I don't know what they were talking about, but and like just that level of wanting to be together. It's
I think
yeah.
so, like you said, I think the pandemic has a portion to do with it, but I also think I think now people are, I don't know if the word is like grateful for like the opportunities they can get, because like a lot of places, like a lot of companies are freezing their hiring, freezing their internship programs. Internships have been like being revoked, people being fired, furloughed, and all of that. And I think it seems like the students kind of have like, I guess gratefulness is a word, to like be in a program where like they're still getting to learn during this time period. They're still having the opportunity to better themselves, to like essentially work on their future business, to work on these things that like they would have not been able to otherwise. So it's the pandemic in one sense, but I also think it's a testament to like what the organization does and what UMP does, like with the students. Absolutely. Now the next kind of, I guess, space I want us to go into is that kind of talk about what students can do to get through this current situation, because we're watching the news, or we stopped watching the news, and
we try to stop.
Exactly, we try to stop watching the news as much as we did when this first started, and I think now we're at the point where we're kind of trying to figure out, okay, things are kind of reopening, where to from here, like where do we go? So where are you trying to take, I guess, the students? Like what are you trying to get them prepared? I know helping them build like their business concept, business plan is one part, to get them set up, but how are you helping them navigate this next year of just uncertainty?
Honestly, it's a very interesting set of circumstances because we first started with COVID-19, which was like, oh man, if we were getting it bad before with job discrimination, it's about to be crazy now. And then this whole black thing happened, and now everyone wants to like show that they love black people.
Black lives.
It's interesting, right? Because
Very.
I'm not sure if, you know, it might be a great time to get jobs for them. You know, like we do have a graduate. Do we have one or two? We have one. I think we have two students who graduated in May, and one of them, she interviewed on Monday, and they told her right away they want her back tomorrow for another interview and another interview, and I'm so happy for her. And so I'm just hoping to see more of that. I mean, when I look on LinkedIn, it's always like this black person being hired in this big position and that black person. So I'm hoping it's not just all for show and they all get laid off and then the cycle will start all over again. But whatever the case may be, I do think it is, in terms of for those that are graduating soon or just graduated, you know, it's just like we teach them all about how to negotiate, how to we literally take them once we get through orientation where we look at like our history. We then are like, okay, this is the job market, this is what it looks like. You're not surprised because you know your history, you know why. Now this is how to navigate it. And then we delve into just essentially, you first go in with a plan for yourself, right? But when you enter a job, before you even enter the job, you should know when you're leaving the job, right? Like, what's the plan, right? Are you gonna, you shouldn't be a lifer anywhere. Like, even if you want to do the corporate thing, like what do you want to do with this job? So we get them to think about every job strategically. So, okay, I'm gonna be here for 2 years. All right. I'm going to be at my first job for 2 years. These are the things that I want to gain. We teach them how to, even if you hate the job, be present, right? Just like active reading, be an active worker, like take advantage of every minute, gain every skill set you can get. Listen to when people are talking. Think about the business concept that you created. Like, is there someone in that space that can help you further that? You know, at jobs, people are always bragging about what they're good at and what they have and what they whatever. So you realize, oh, you're connected to that person. I need to be connected to that person. So just paying attention, gaining all the human capital and then the resources, and just leveraging it for your future. Like, what is this job? What can the job do for me? I think for Black people, we're always like, what can I do for the job so they don't fire me? And it doesn't make sense. I'm like, they hired you. It costs a lot to hire someone, so they want you there. So you don't have to hold on to the job. Just do the job. You know, like we really drill that into their head. And I know half of them won't listen, but it's just like when your parents tell you something and it's happening, it comes back up. And that's our job. We're hoping that we've told you now. So when it comes up, you should be like, Essie did say this. Like, I'm tripping. Like, you know, we teach them all about, like, if you're supposed to be working 37.5 hours per week, work 37.5 hours per week. Don't, you know, a lot of times we get a job, we go in early, we leave late. We're like, oh, I'm just trying to impress them. Why are you trying to impress them? They hired you. Like, just do your job. Like, your job, that's it, and leave. Like, I used to go in late and leave early, okay? And I got a raise every year.
Let them know. Let them know.
And if I wanted to stay there, I'd probably be like, God knows, making how much by now, because I was confident and I didn't give a damn. And they knew that. They were like, she not give a damn. Damn. What time did she walk in here today? I'm like, the work is done. Out. Nobody's here. I'm out.
Oh my God. I love
work is done. The work is done. As long as the work is excellent, you know, it's like, don't watch other people. Like, if they want to be in there all the time, 24/7, that's fine. But you don't have to overdo it. You know, even if you want to climb the ladder, it's all about being excellent. Just do excellent work. You know, obviously there are times when every hand is on deck, right? Like for our job, we would have essentially our gala, like a tribute dinner. all hands are on deck. You know, you might work late or you have to travel. Be a team player. That's part of work. Be a team player. But on the day to day, do your job. You know, if you're supposed to be there at 8, be there at 8. You know where you can bend and stuff. You know, everyone you get the dynamic of the workplace. You know, you read the culture of the workplace and you're like,
Yeah.
all right, they really aren't with this late thing. So be on time and leave when you need to leave. But when you set a precedence for being there more than you need to, you set an expectation for that. And
Oh, yeah.
it's really hard to it's really hard to now say like I'm leaving on time because they're like,
Yeah.
but you always stay late. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on? You know, and it's like, and you're like, but I'm just leaving on time. But it's like, well, but you've been working overtime for 6 months.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to be really careful about what expectations you set and just essentially start with what you can handle and stay there. You know, I've seen so many of my friends, they go from corporate job to corporate job to corporate job. They start and they're like, yeah, I'm working like 60 hours a week. And I'm like, why? Why?
Mm-hmm.
They're and then within 6 months they burn out, they hate the job, and they're looking
Yeah.
for another job. And I'm like, just do your job. Like you don't have to go crazy.
I really like your perspective. Sorry, just reading a comment.
I
Someone says, "Ooh, I don't agree with that statement, but
yeah,
okay." Yeah, definitely share your perspective on that. Definitely share your perspective. I'm curious to see how your thoughts on like working overtime and doing all that is. So definitely share that. I'm curious to hear. But oh, Essie, you said so many things. I just kind of want to just touch on or just
another
confirm.
before I forget,
Yes,
another
go
thing
ahead.
is just like being on all the time, right? So like if they're emailing you after work, if you show that you're always going to respond, it continues. You know, like I was there for 4 years. I was the youngest, I was the only black person. I did my job very well, but I did not respond to stuff after work unless, again, it was one of those. You have to just set that precedence. Like they're like, "Oh, I emailed you," and you're like, "Yeah, like I don't." It was after hours. Like I'll get back to you, and they get it. They're like, "Oh, okay, like that's how she is," you
Yeah.
know. But if you show that you're always on, you're always available, you can't switch it up later. You can't be like, I'm tired of this. They're overworking me. It's like, no, you're overworking yourself. And now they have expectations.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
we're
Yes.
all human. You set expectations like a relationship.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what someone told me yesterday. Like that's exactly how she said it. She was like, you know, the same way in a relationship, you wouldn't want to deal with certain things from your partner. It's the same way with the job. You don't
Yep.
take what you don't want. You know what I'm saying? You don't take disrespect. You set
Yep.
boundaries and you let them know how the relationship is going to work. And you
Exactly.
said so many things. First, I want to touch on the development work that I think is like the most crucial part of just everything. It's that I feel like what you guys really do that is so key is help transition these college students into the professional world. And it sounds really small, but like I feel like the common theme to when I was talking to the other 2020 grads and the common theme ever since I dropped this whole Pay Me What You Owe song and talking about college and that whole thing is that people feel like yes, college is teaching me how to do like the specific work, like once I get there, but they're not teaching me that transition, how to negotiate a salary,
Right.
how to
Right.
set boundaries for myself, like
Right.
what I need to do to actually be successful at the job, to think of a job and be like, okay, what do I want from this job? What am I trying to learn and what am I trying to get out of it? Like to navigate your career. They don't teach that transition part and I feel like what you guys do is like you catch that like these students who come out and like they may have skills or like they're getting ready to get out and have these skills you guys get them and like you're like fine tuning them the way not all colleges like I don't bash
Right.
colleges I support education but like you refine them in a way that okay once they leave now they're really good to go now they're cleaned up now they're sharp and once they go out into the professional world they're good to go so I really 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 love that. Second, boundaries. Oh my God. I feel like I probably complained about this to you, especially when I was working. I was not good at setting boundaries. I was not good at it, and everything bad that could happen from it happened
Yeah.
because I could not set those boundaries.
Yeah.
And why couldn't I set boundaries? Because one, I felt like if I said no, my ass was gonna get fired, and I was scared of getting
Right.
fired. I was
Right.
always scared of getting fired, even though I was hired for the job and I
Exactly.
did the job well. You know what I'm saying? I was always paranoid, like, oh God, like I'm already stacked up to here with assignments. Like I'm not gonna be able to finish it all. But if someone gives me an extra assignment and I tell them I can't do it, they're gonna think I'm incompetent. I can't do the job. Like she's not good enough. And I never wanted to give people a reason to think that.
Yeah.
So I kept saying yes to things. I started like sending emails after work, you know, doing some assignments here and there after work, and I couldn't stop it. Like I could
Yeah.
not stop it.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
fear. A fear.
yes, it really is. So I love that so much. I love that so much. Um, so now, so now, now I kind of want to talk about, aside from the consultantpreneurship program, you have a few other programs and things that development is currently working on. Sorry.
Hmm.
Other projects that development is currently working on. I don't know if you want to share any of those, but I kind of wanted to see like how the organization is developing and like what you're trying to do for not only Black people in America, but also essentially Africans in the diaspora. So Africans who are currently on the continent, they could be in UK, they could be here, wherever. Like, what are you doing in that respect?
Yeah, so that's a big question. I'll try to synthesize the response as much as possible. But essentially, this virtual experience has enabled us to realize that going global, which has always been the goal since day one, it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. Like, we don't necessarily have to travel to do that. And we've always been global because students are from everywhere. And so we've always had students from everywhere. But we originally thought, like, oh, we're going to do the entrepreneurship, like, we'll have satellite offices and it'll happen
Yeah.
simultaneously in different spaces. And we never knew how we were actually going to do this because it sounded like such a big task. And we know how much work we put in just having this one location. And we're like, how are we really going to do this? So the virtual thing has been great because it's helped us to realize, like, okay, not only can we accept more students at once, but we can really legitimately go global a lot faster. For instance, we can usually students are paired with businesses. They're all paired with individual businesses that they consult for. But because of COVID-19, we had students consult for us because businesses are in disarray, or were. It's kind of in a
Yeah.
transitionary period. And so the model is a lot more streamlined, and we realize, okay, like, we could put students in a business in Ghana or Jamaica or whatever, as long as the organization is really serious about participating, and they can consult for one business at a time, which is a lot easier to manage, and
Yeah.
they can still have that global experience. That's just one thing. But beyond that, we have our Black Generational Wealth Workshop where it's like when we were trying to figure out, okay, besides the consultantpreneurship, how else can we touch students in a meaningful way? And we felt like the biggest topic, we touch a lot of things, but the central theme is generational wealth. So that's why we came up with it's a 2-hour workshop, and students become aware of the realities of um, the economic situation that we're all affected by with the wealth gap, and how that kind of puts us back. We go through that. They do a survey which allows them to figure out where they are on the spectrum of building wealth, and we break down the different steps that they would have to take to build wealth based on where they are. So obviously, someone who has $60,000 in debt, their trajectory is a little different from someone else that has 5,000 or none.
Yeah.
If you're a college student, you have no debt, and you have $2,000 in the bank, well, you're doing pretty good. You got to keep that going. You need to understand that $2,000 is not throwaway money. It's
Yes.
actually wealth that can grow.
Mm-hmm.
So we take them through that, and then we make them aware of the statistics around um, employment discrimination, and then we explain to them how entrepreneurship can be a viable career option, and how, even if it's not the only thing you do, it can be supplemental. It can be something you do in the meantime, while you're looking, you know, whatever. We break all that down. So that's our Black Generational Wealth workshop. But that program, we're expanding it into a 4-week program where students will go through that workshop. They'll fill out our business concept form. We'll give them a high level